Assalamu alaikum. I'm not so sure if the peace greeting was even appropriate, but I gave it anyway. But here's the deal, y'all. Unfortunately, I found some valuable information, but it was sad yesterday, and I found this from my students, my good students in the good class. Appraised me of the situation here in this country, and they don't know that I am Black Mind. They don't know who Black Mind is. They don't know about the channel. They know about Ahmed Tijani, and they know about Abu American now because I told them. But they don't know about Black Mind. They don't know I have a YouTube channel. These students, in a conversation about some other stuff, practicing in the Telegram group, their English, began to joke with each other about this gender war that's going on. And I thought at first maybe they were joking about the West until someone explained, no, we're talking about here in this country. And I said, you got to be kidding me. When did this start? They told me it was about 3 or 4 years ago. Pretty much shortly after Me Too and Bill Cosby's initial accusations and early jury selection phases of his trial, which was about 4 years ago this time. TikTok and Twitter began to light up with Me Too. And here's the thing. These girls, this is 4 years ago, so these girls are starting high school back then. The girls their age were starting high school. But some of the girls at that time were starting university or were already in university. And they were studying different things. And now some of them are working. They're driving their own cars. They're nurses. They're baristas, or they're running some sort of business or things like that. And what they're doing is they're following what they see on TikTok and Twitter. And here's the funny thing too. The stuff they're following is not in their own language. But women who have the women who have a bad enough, a low enough level of self-discipline to follow someone that they know doesn't like them anyway, usually don't have a level of discipline enough to learn another language. So this means that there's another alternative way that this is coming through to them. Now, Twitter, you can translate a lot of stuff, but people on Twitter are usually so low IQ that they can't properly write in their own language. So the translations can't come through correctly. What's happening is that there are chat rooms. And I told gentlemen, I told you this before. If we men do not get busy getting literate in our first language, utilizing Google Translate to translate, because if it's written correctly in the first language, it will translate mostly correctly into the next language, usually. If we don't do this and then get into these chat rooms and reach out to these men in other areas that have not yet been afflicted with this gender war, these areas will become afflicted with it, and the men will be the ones caught off guard because the feminist misandrists will make sure that the women get the message. They will make sure that they are writing correctly in their own language with capitalization, punctuation, and proper spelling of homophones, with which most of you ninjas, manosphere or not, red pill, blue pill, or purple pill, men or women, don't want to be bothered and think is very elitist and stuck up of me to even promote for you. Oh, you know what I meant, writing ass niggas. Letter U, space, N-O, space, W-U-T, space, E-Y-E, space, M-I-N-T, no punctuation. Illiterate ass niggas. I wish I could say it nicely, but I just can't. I'm sorry. A lot of you, feminist misandrists, all the way up to the most militant red pill manosphere men, have one thing in common. You ninjas were too cool for school during school. You didn't learn how to write correctly in your own first language, and now you really can't. Your comments suck. Your titles suck. So you can't go into chat rooms and appraise the men in these areas of what's coming down the pike. But amongst the feminists, there are some ladies that have made sure to learn these things so that they can utilize Google Translate and chat rooms to see to it that women who previously were not a problem became corrupted and became a problem. Kuala Lumpur, you could pretty much already say they got. Yeah, that's Kuala Lumpur for you. Jordanian colleague of mine that has since passed away, rahimahullah, of COVID, unfortunately, told me something the last time I saw him alive. He gave me a lift from work one day, and I appreciated him doing it. We were chatting, and he said that he had to go to Malaysia the time that I covered for his class. He said he had to be in Malaysia to defend his dissertation for his PhD. One of the professors cross-examining him was a female and a feminist, and she wanted to know why he did his analysis on a male hero character and not a female heroine character. And that she pretty much grilled him about nothing other than that, and that had nothing to do with the academic requirements of his PhD. And I said to him, let me ask you this, doctor. When was the last time that any woman sat you down and explained women to you so you'd understand them? He said, they never do that. I said, does that include mothers, grandmothers? And he said, yeah, they don't tell us that much about them. And I said, okay, do wives do this? And he said, okay, you're getting silly now. My wife doesn't, and I know your wife doesn't do that either. And I said, no. I'm not being silly. I'm reminding you of something. That lady had no business asking you this. And I think that you should report her to her boss. Because we don't understand women enough to justify doing analyses of them like this. Because if you had done so, this lady would have asked you what made you feel comfortable doing an analysis of a female heroine. As if you could understand women. We don't understand them, doctor, because they don't want us to understand them. Because they're hiding something. It's a war, and she was fighting that war against you. He told me, I told him. I learned something. That's when I realized how bad Kuala Lumpur was. Not so much the whole country of Malaysia, as far as I know. I'm not sure, but I realized KL was bad, and that was why my buddy wound up going through 2 feminists in a row, if not 3. 2 of them in a row. I shouldn't say feminists. They were misandrists. They were independent women's that do what they want and live their lives. Pretty much the Malay version of I said what I said with a thought clap, that type thing. It's pretty much just a more polite tone of voice with which they say it. So I found out from my students that this was bad over here too. How bad it had gotten. The gender war had already got started. And nobody's telling these men what's coming down the pike. So I took it upon myself to listen to them first to get an idea as to how bad it was. And then I told them what's coming down the pike. I told them that regardless of the laws and the conservatism of the laws here, due to spirituality, well, this is what was coming down the pike. I told them, if these women are pressured by each other to have these to level these false accusations of harassment, always blame a man for harassment because it boosts their social standing amongst their friends, then understand that these women are already beginning to think with a hive mind. This means that the 7 to 13% of men that one woman likes will no longer be different from the 7 to 13% of men that her friend likes. They're going to want the same 7 to 13% of men. So a few men are going to be screwing all of these women, and they're going to be the fathers. So many siblings will not know their siblings, and they're going to meet up later, and they're going to have kids, not knowing their siblings. What the hell do you think this is going to lead to? I told them this had already happened in my community, that we, black folk, Western or non-Western, were very, very against incest. We were more against it than those who kidnapped us from Africa. But that we were beginning to develop the same afflictions that were associated with incest because we had people who did not know they were siblings meeting each other as adults and marrying. Because their biological fathers were the same men. Because the women, their mothers, only wanted the same few men anyway, and that's all they would screw. Every other man was supposed to think he was the dad and raise someone else's kid. And that's all there was. There was nothing else. Nothing else was supposed to happen. You're not supposed to raise your own. You're not supposed to have your own as a normal man. That's what these women are going to shoot for in the next few years. I said to them, do you remember the girl across the border, Rahaf Khanun, that ran away from her country? And they were like, oh, yeah, we had to know. I had to hear about that. I told them, this is what she did over there. Abu America knows about this. Y'all already know the story about how she ran and Canada gave her asylum and then, they took her in. Canada wouldn't send her back. But here's the other thing. She began to eat bacon, drink wine, have a boyfriend. She had a baby with no marriage. Then she recently gave the baby to the father so that she could go and continue living her life and being a slut some more. She told the dad, you could give the baby up for adoption and I would not care. He got it, and since he had custody, he got a DNA test. I guess it was to make the case for custody, even though she gave him custody. I don't know what the reason was. Turned out the baby wasn't his. She didn't just have a boyfriend and fornicate with him. She fornicated with more than him. And he's not the father of that baby. She was willing, and she had to have known that. I suspect she did. Or she at least knew the baby might not be his. So she was willing to pass off a baby to him to raise that might not be his. But she wasn't willing to pass off that baby to the baby's actual father to raise. Why is that? Because Western wicked witches actually hate whatever it is about you that makes you a good dad. They hate that. I mean, you could be, the protection piece is fine, but they don't like the other things. And I was telling them, she knew about this. She became worse than the wicked witches of the West. She joined them and then superseded them. But understand that this gender war that is starting right here and now in the form of these false accusations that a few teenage girls and a few young adult women like to make because it gives them social standing with their friends is going to get worse. And they're not just getting this from Twitter and TikTok because a lot of these girls are not bilingual and they're not getting, they're not watching an English TikTok video and understanding what's going on unless someone's translating all of these videos for them. Now, if that's the case, then who's doing it? They're in chat rooms getting translations. Somewhere down the line, they're getting translations. Someone is making the effort to translate this stuff. So you guys are going to have to take what I'm telling you and translate this into Arabic and tell other men. Don't tell them that Professor Mine told you this. Spread the information, but not the name. I don't fear the shame and the blame. I fear the fame because Allah might not reward me if I become famous for this. I said to them, this is how you can tell who's at war with you. Ask women questions about what they really like in men or what they really want. And if they can't give you a clear-cut explanation and they don't admit I can't really explain it in words, she's deceitful. Maybe if she says it's hard to explain in words, but I could probably show you, then she might be telling the truth. But if she starts confusing you with her answers and sounding confused with her answers and starts using sounds that aren't really words to try to explain the things she wants, she's trying to deceive you and leave you in the dark. That's a woman at war with you, even if it's your own mother that does it. I said to them these things. I told them pretty much exactly what it is. I would not be allowed to tell them if they were black sons of single mothers. That was how I knew exactly what they needed to hear. Imagine that these are black sons of single mothers in, in Freelandia. Shout out to the Black Lightning series. I'm sorry, Freeland. Or in maybe a place like, let's say in Atlanta, Los Angeles, Miami, Cleveland, Ohio and Cleveland, Tennessee, Memphis, shawty, Columbia, South Carolina, Brunswick, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, these areas. I said, let me just imagine that these are black sons of single mothers, gynocrats and matriarchs. What does she not want me to tell them? I told these guys here, and they said, this explains it. We can't wait to spread this. So at some point there will be a time. At some point there was going to be a time when these men were as red pill aware as we are. I wanted to shorten that time. I said to them, if each of you tells 3, and you tell each 3 to tell 3 more, then within 2 weeks, 891 could be aware of this. Really, it could be 2,673 that could be aware of this. It could even be 8,019 that could be aware of this. The point is that somewhere down the line, this has to spread equal numbers. People need to know about this. Because this gender war what you're seeing is not just a conflict and a trend and fad, it's the beginning of a gender war. Maybe you can prevent an actual outright gender war, but for the most part, that's the road that you're on right now. Your nation is on that. Now, the reason I knew it was this bad was because some of the students said it may be that we can't get married if this continues and gets this bad. Because already, even though the law outlaws anyone harassing anyone, at this point, women can accuse men and be believed. No one's going to believe a man that says, actually, I didn't harass her. It takes witnesses or a camera. That's what it takes. They said the reputation of men can be ruined. So even if he's not convictable in a court because of lack of evidence that he actually harassed her and broke the law, the fact is that he could lose his job. He could lose everything. Such a man could wind up on the street if his family believes the accusations and he can't prove that they're not true. These men are living in fear already. I told them, listen, what this means is you have to go, when you do things like you want to go to the movie theater, you have to go at a time when it's not crowded. That means you may have to go when on a weeknight or something, or a weekday afternoon. That's what this means. You can't afford to be going to the movie theaters, when everybody else is there, because there's going to be a bunch of teenage girls there or young adult women there that are single, and all they want to do is get attention from their peers. And even though it ruins a man's reputation to say he harassing me, it enhances hers amongst her friends. These young men already knew about 2 terms, though. 2 terms they already knew about. One, game, what that means in this context, and the other one was body count. These boys knew what these terms meant because they had been trying to find some of the information already, but it was a lot for them to go through and study at the same time. So I made it so they don't have to. Gentlemen, if you are not willing to learn how to read and write, well, mostly to write correctly in your first language, then you're not going to be able to help other men around the world to get in front of this thing. And see, one student asked me, but yo, Professor Mind, why would they want to go into chat rooms if they're sitting there in the US and Germany and Holland and France and Portugal and Spain and Italy and Scandinavia? Why would they want to sit down and translate this stuff into Arabic to tell some lady in a chat room about this? And I told them, because, gentlemen, they see this as a prime area to recruit women into their cause because of the stereotypes. But there's one other thing too. They know that if these ladies here don't push you away and they're not mean to you and they treat you with respect, they'll stay married to you. Generally speaking, they will. They know this. The women that are over there that are feminists, they're not happy necessarily. And they don't want other women to be happy with a man and stay married to him. So the thing is that these Western women that are feminists have driven us away. I will never approach a Western woman. I don't marry them. I don't validate them. I don't do anything except tell them you drove your man away. Do exactly what the hell you don't want to do if you want to get him back. And it might not work even then because it's been too long. I'm one example of that. So in the end, they know that they drove us away. They ain't gonna find men no more. See, they crying about not being approached. That's coming later on. At some point, men are going to stop approaching women in public, and they're going to stop going to women's houses to meet their dads and talk about marriage too. Some point, this is what's going to happen. It's going to happen here. The feminists in the West know this, and they're looking for this day. Because if they can't have us, they don't want your women to have these options either. So they're going to corrupt your women because evil seeks to spread. That's why they're doing it. In a nutshell, they drove them in a way. And when they drove us away, we will marry women that act like the way your moms would treat your father if he was responsible. We will marry women that would act like your aunts would treat their husbands, or your uncles' wives would treat your uncles if the husbands are responsible. Because here, women will divorce an unresponsible man. I was saying to them, you see, they don't want that. They don't want us going and marrying non-Western women, and that's exactly what's happening. They act like this. They come with this independent, strong stuff. What do? We know about this. We hear it. We see it. We get sick and tired of the hypocrisy. We go and marry a traditional woman from a traditional region of the world. They hate that. So they decided that they're going to go on the offense and try to corrupt these traditional women in these traditional areas. And if they can do that here, as far as they're concerned, they could do it anywhere. They want to do this in places like Thailand. Because people don't fly to Thailand just to pay for a little play. Some fly there for girlfriends, others fly there for wives. They've already done this in Kuala Lumpur, as I mentioned. Because Malaysia as a whole is not a bad place to find a wife as far as I know. Indonesia is not a bad place as far as I know, but they've already gotten Jakarta, the capital. There are cats that fly to the Philippines. And I said to them, if your ladies start listening, matter of fact, they've already started, don't approach them. And tell your parents, don't look for me as a citizen wife. Don't look for me a wife that is from here or even from the Gulf. Why not? Well, because they like to blame men for harassment when they didn't do it. They're on that feminism stuff. That's our generation. You don't want that as a daughter-in-law. Go find me someone from the Philippines. Go find me an Indonesian. Go find me a Jordanian, a traditional Jordanian. Go find me a traditional Yemeni maybe, but do not bring me a Gulf woman. Because the ones close to my age are listening to that feminism talk, and I'm done with that. So that's what I want you all to know. I wanted you all to keep this in mind and understand this. Months ago, I made the decision, and weeks ago, I announced it that I was going to red pill the guys here. I was going to start the process. I didn't realize that I was already too late to avoid reacting. I was too late to proact. I was not aware of this at the time I said that. I didn't know it had gotten this far. But the black community, it ain't gonna make it. And I had to send to them some links to some videos where we're talking about this type of stuff. And I had to tell them, this will be you. If you don't get in front of this thing and spread this knowledge and stop it, this will be you. My community ain't gonna be around much longer. White community, I don't know what's gonna happen. I'll find something, but even they're not forming couples. You all, yeah. They'll have your women feeling like all of you are inferior to them. They'll have a few of your men having all the babies and the rest of you raising them thinking they're yours. Your grandkids will have health problems they didn't have before because their parents will be half siblings. Their kids probably even have Down syndrome. And that's if those grandkids, and that's if they're even yours. Because if you have a son, you are very unlikely to have any offspring, any grandkids through that son. Because most women won't be screwing most men. Most women will be screwing the same few men. And if you have daughters with these women, your daughters are going to be sluts and whores with high body counts. And your sons, most of them will be incels. Not even with anything wrong with them. But they'll be incels because women are simply eliminating the majority of men. And the morality of your son will count against him as far as that's concerned. You won't be able to say if I'm going to go and look for a good woman and introduce him to my son, because they won't be good to your son. This doom and gloom scenario for my people will become true for yours. I don't like it, but that's what it's shaping out to be if this gender conflict continues into a gender war. And even in the golden sphere, I want y'all to keep this in mind. You ladies that are in the golden sphere, if you are determined to not start a gender conflict with guys, you're not going to find men that are willing to have a conflict with you. But understand there's two ladies. And this is important for you to realize. And I know 3 of you are already on that gender war stuff. Until the day that you are willing to put that stuff down, that gender war, and you submit, meaning you cooperate for the most part. You either say, I'm going to pay the cost to be the boss, or you say, the man, since I'm going to make him pay the cost anyway, he is the boss. Until the day you make up your mind which one of them you're going to do, and you throw out this idea that you're going to be feminist and hypergamous at the same time and still be with someone, you will start the gender war. You are already dragging it into the golden sphere. 3 of you, and you should know who you are. It's 3 that I know. I don't know about the others. One of you hung up on a lady because she said Kevin Samuels was right. No, he was right, and she was right for saying it. And if you're going to take on the attitude of Kevin Samuels' detractors and his enemies, the same attitude that they have in the black community from which you're trying to defect, then you're going to bring that same thing into the golden sphere and in the golden community that you want to start. And while I openly and fully support your right to be able to go somewhere and not be blamed for things you didn't do because of your phenotype, it doesn't matter if I support the idea of a golden community or not if you three are allowed to remain in it. Because it won't be able to be a community because you will ruin the endogamous nature of it. You will preach your stuff and you will run off any sensible man. And it will become just like the so-called Blackistan you want to leave, when in reality it's Nijistan you're trying to leave behind. Idnistan. I think that I may have jeopardized my job. I hope not, but I may have jeopardized my job by telling these students this. And I'm not going to lie to you. Jeopardizing my job means jeopardizing my hijra, and that's the truth of the matter. But in all honesty, y'all really want to know the truth? Man, if this is the reason that I wind up losing it, this is worth it. Because I can fight the manosphere's gender war in the manosphere and then turn around in the golden sphere and advise him on how to not bring in this gender war. I can do both because it's already a gender war in the black community as a whole. It's already there. I can get in it and then turn around in golden sphere and say, I'm not going to bring that stuff here, but I'm going to help you I'm going to help you filter it out. And that's actually one of my stances. So Multiracial Movement and Exoticals United, you were two that I think deserve to know this about me right off the bat. Mr. Cannon, you're one of the men that deserves to know this about me right off the bat. When it comes to the golden sphere, I also don't want the gender war to get in, and I'm willing to advise and speak on how to keep it out, how to prevent it from starting. I'm afraid and I'm pessimistic that it's going to anyway, but at the very least, I'm going to do my part to make sure that that blood ain't going to be on my hands, because over here, it's too late to prevent it. We might be able to stop it from getting any worse, and we may be able to turn it around. We may be able to stomp out the weed before it overtakes the garden, but it's too late to prevent it from ever popping up. Over here, it's too late. I wish it wasn't, but it is. Over here, sadly, we have a situation in which, it's already getting started. The teenage girls can't sit up and say, I'm not harassed because I'm respected. They can't do that. They can't sit up and say, well, most of the men are respectful when I get around them. Harassment is a very rare phenomenon anyway, and it hasn't happened to me. They can't say that to each other, because the minute one tries to say that, all of the rest of them start with that sugarnet, because these are some ninjas too, especially the better ones. And they start with, oh, men just don't want you. That's why you don't get no attention. But getting attention from a man here that's not related to you and ain't your husband may or may not be illegal, just him noticing you. But knowing that you have his attention and him trying to talk to you and get your attention back is harassment. And so they got to say harassment here. In order to say that they're getting attention from men and the men are trying to get their attention, they got to call it harassment, because that's the only legal term for it. It has to be that. And I'm looking at these dudes. I'm like, man, I know that people say that teenage boys can be rowdy and negative and toxic and all that, but what you all are dealing with is their toxicity and not yours. I mean, these dudes got it bad, though, because they go to these high schools, and at some of these high schools, you got dudes, they're students, and they're 18 and 19 with full mustaches and beards because they done flunked, they done failed. You got some pretty rough cats at these high schools, and some of them even violate other dudes. They say that the difference between a high school here and a prison is that you leave high school and go home at the end of the day. But while you're there at the school, you got gang fights, tribal fights, neighborhood fights. You got some dudes violating others. You got some guys that got to go to somebody else for protection. They say that's what it's like. It ends at the end of the school day. But during the time of the school day, it's that bad. So most good dudes got to go to these areas in which a few bad dudes that are willing to violate, and I mean, when I say violate, I mean grape with a silent G. Willing to grape some other dudes. A few of them are out there like that, but everybody got to be on guard against them. So they in their car heading home. They got to deal with this. Mind you, if you a straight man, that's exactly what the hell you don't want. Another dude trying to come on to you like that, forcefully or politely. You don't want that because you straight. And then you get out there and you don't bother women, even though you straight. You don't bother them. But then because you sold one a coffee, or you opened a door and bumped into her or something like that, now he harassing me. Just because she thinks that you might have enjoyed accidentally bumping into her a little too much. Or because she thinks you might have enjoyed standing in front of her or standing behind her in line too much. And she needs an ego boost in front of her friends, so she gonna have to point a finger at somebody at some point to validate herself amongst her friends. That's what these young cats got to deal with now. At the end of this conversation, one of the things I wanted to say to them, but I stopped. I wanted to say to them, welcome to America. But I quit. I didn't say that. Gentlemen, those of us that are fighting this gender war in the manosphere are going to have to step it up. Now, I'm going to do this part. At this point, I've already started the stage that I told you all about previously, which is to appraise men of the situation that are in areas where this has not really gotten that far ahead or where it's not started, so that it can't start, let alone get that far ahead. But I'm going to tell you, those of you who come from places on the continent, you need to let your men know, even if you're from somewhere where this type of thing ain't really that big a deal yet, you need to let the men know this is what it's leading to here. You need to let them know this. This is important because there are traditional parts of back home where this is not reared its head yet, but instead of waiting for it to rear its head and reactively telling the men, I think it's better if we just go ahead and start saying to the men, this is what's happening over here. And I know you don't want this, what's happening, over there in the States. I know you don't want it over here where you are. Just know that it exists, so that if you see this start over here, you can prevent it. And if it never starts, then that's great. Praise be to Allah. It never began in the first place. Plus, if these ladies know that you know what that stuff over there is, they're not going to be okay with trying to introduce that over here. See, in areas where it has not reared its head, the ladies still need to know, once they find out what it is, they still need to know, okay, this is what these men were talking about is going on over there. And this is one of these ladies from over there trying to put this in my head. And if I start talking that stuff, these men are going to pick up on it and throw me out right off the bat. That's what they need to know what's happening. I wish I could have said this in a shorter message. Thank you for taking the time that this has taken to listen. Black heart, black mind, blackout. And you know why I say black, heterosexual, non-select, male power, just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day.